Hi, Jawar. What I have here is the log that Robert had sent to me, which was an example of files that you guys are trying to capture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the basic calibration and capture of any annotations on the log, lithology track, as well as an ROP type capture, and what the LAS file would look at the end, and how to edit it, the LAS file itself. So what we're going to start with here is I'm going to calibrate this first track that has the formations in it. So I'm going to turn on my standard depth calibration tool to create my depth axis. We'll go ahead and click on 100, type in the depth, and then we're just going to do a little bit of this log. So we'll go down to around 4,000. So I'm going to click on 4,000. Now in this particular one, in the depth track, I don't really have any data other than text. So I'm really going to be defining the left and right margins. So I'll just put in 0 and 1. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to straighten the depth axis, which will help with keep everything straight in the calibration. So with that, what we want to do is, if you zoom in, you'll notice any place where the color changes, you want it to be red on top of right on top of your image. So you can just scroll up your log, and anytime you see it changing, like here, you can move it over. Okay. So what we're going to do next is we're going to add our depth grids. Normally our calibration is looking for grids on the log. This one obviously doesn't have any. So we've added a new depth gridding algorithm that will place them evenly. So if you hold down your right mouse button, you can click Add Grid Lines, and we're going to create evenly spaced grids. And we'll put them every 100. Okay. So you'll notice it's placed them what it thinks evenly is every 100. Now if you'll notice, this one's straight on and these are a little bit off. And so the reason for that is, of course, either stretch or skew from the imperfect image. So if you just grab one of these and pull them down a little, you'll notice that everything below gets corrected as well. So adjusting will just work as you work with the stretch of the log. I'm going to go ahead and make sure this calibration is good, because we're going to use this first track to copy and move to the other track, so I don't have to recalibrate more than once. So we'll scroll down and make sure everything's looking correct. A bit further. Okay, so everything looks good. So once we have there, we're going to go back to the top of the log. You can scroll up or hit the T for top. And so what I'm going to do now, since I don't really have any curves, but I'm going to go ahead and name my track. So we're going to add the name of the track as a curve, but this is probably going to change a little bit. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and call this formation, or form, and I'll say it's my formation text. So all that does is give me a placeholder to hold my text. So once I go down, I'm going to turn on my annotation tool. Scroll down to the first formation. So here it is at the rest. So I'm going to click on the line. You'll notice since I've calibrated it nicely, it already knows that the depth I'm on. So now I'll type at the rest F. You can change the color now. All of these color settings or the formatting will be shown on your LAS file. So set the text to whatever size you want and font. And whatever's set here, it will follow, it will remember and be for the rest of the text until changed. So I'll say OK. And I'll go and add one more. So put the Aruma. This one was a little bit off, so you can change the depth. So now I'll put in Aruma formation at 287. Make this blue again. and say OK. Now, if any of these ever need to be edited, you'll notice that it has a tooltip, so it'll tell you what's in there. You can either double-click to open it and edit, or you can right-click and go to the properties. Okay, so we'll just cover a couple of them. So we're going to go back to the top. Now we're going to actually use this depth grid to capture the rest of them, so I don't have to recalibrate. So what I'm going to go do, I'm going to go back to my calibration mode. I'm going to hold down my right click, or I'm going to go right click, and I'm going to copy my depth axis. So once I copy it, you can either just drag it, or you can click to move where you want your top left-hand corner. Once it's there, you can use your arrow keys to nudge it up, wherever you need to. But you want to align it as closely as possible, with what you had. So once you have it in the position you'd like, you can right-click and paste the depth grid, and you'll see that you have everything in place without having to recalibrate. Now, one thing different is, since this is a lithology track, I'm going to right-click and set it as a lithology track. Now, if I were calibrating, that I would have an option, a checkbox option, to change it there. So when calibrating, you get this box, and so that's what's going to be checked for you. So once it's calibrated, since it's not a regular curve and it's lithology, I'm going to go down and click my lithology capture. So you'll notice the dialog that it brings up, and so what it wants to do is you're going to set up a few parameters first. So you have your scale increment, and that's so percent-wise how you're going to capture the log, whether by 5% or 10%. Since it's all whole numbers and it all needs to go to 100%. So I'm going to say I want to capture it at 10% is probably good, and let's change that to 5%. So we're going to make this every 10 feet. Okay, and so you'll notice when I go between 10 and 5 feet, if you look at this box, I change this to 5. You'll notice this turns into 5 feet. So that's basically the width or the depth of each lithology, whatever you're going to capture. So we're going to do it at 10. So we're going to start building what we need here. So we see that we first have a sand. So we're going to go to Add Lithology, scroll down, and I'm going to go to my sandstone. You'll notice that I have a lithology set. You can go and start building your own library. We do go ahead and put some in there for you, or you can change them as long as you have your own you can do a meta file, a bitmap, JPEG, EMF, or DIB files. So any of those will come over and work correctly for you. So I'm going to choose my sandstone, and you'll see that it comes into my list, and we can start capturing. So if I click on the first line where I want to start, I can either drag, and if you see where I added one where I didn't mean to, if I click to the far left, it brings it back down to 0. So like I said, I can drag, or I can click, scroll down, hold the shift key down, and click again, and it'll cover that area. Now you'll see down here we have, some anhydrite and limestone and some more sandstone. Well, when we build our lithology track, we want to make sure that everything we build here is in the same order as we see in the track. So in this case, we're going to want to have our anhydrite first, then the limestone, then the sandstone. So let's go ahead and add a few of those. So we're going to add an anhydrite. Same with this, the colors can be changed, or same with the bitmap. So I'm going to add an anhydrite. And I'm going to add a limestone. And then I'm also going to add, we'll go ahead and start with that. Now, if you'll see here, my sandstone's in the right position, but I really need to have my anhydrite before my limestone. So whichever one, I'm going to select my limestone, and I'm going to move it down in the list, because I want this size to match this. So I'm going to add my limestone here. And at the moment, I'm actually going to go down to anhydrite because you're going to always build from the left-hand side. Okay, so once again, I can either go down and drag. And now, if I do it wrong, if I click too far out, I can, wherever you click will be the end point. So once again, I can click at the top, hold my shift key down at the end of each interval for a quicker capture. Now I'm going to switch to my limestone, add that. Now you'll notice as I draw on my limestone, I have no worries of overdrawing my anhydrite. I'm going to put this in, and then here you'll notice I forgot an anhydrite. If I go back and click it, I can go and click and add it in, and then I can fix my limestone. So I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of limestone, go to sandstone, add the rest of sand. Down here we have unknown, so I'll go ahead and add, you can add a new one, say, I've already added a bunch, I'll just say, unknown. Okay. All right. So I have my unknown, and we do the same thing. I can leave that at the top because it's not going to bump into anybody. So we'll scroll down, hold my shift key down, all of that's covered, switch to my limestone, and capture that. And then I'll just add shale, so we have one more. So let's go ahead and add our shale. Now once again, we see where the shale is. So we want to make sure the shale needs to be after my limestone. So here's my limestone, so I'm going to move it down in the list. Now if I forgot to move it, what will happen is if I keep that at the top and I start to fill in my shale, you'll notice that it puts them in the opposite direction. Now, if Robert is giving you the right version, you're going to have an undo. You can go back, or you can just redigitize right there. So I'm going to move my shale down below the limestone. And so at that point, all I have to do is draw. Drag down and draw. Okay? Okay, so for right now, we've done enough of that. We can add it, I'll just make my sandstone and make it even here. Oops. And then click to get rid of that row. Okay. Note that there's also right-click options. You can rename any one of the lithologies. You can replace one, so that's if within an interval I gave it the wrong name, I can replace it without them getting messed up. You can remove it in clear, and you can set the opacity of the overlaid colors. Okay, so for right now we're going to quit. Go ahead and save. And then we're going to go ahead and copy this track again. So I'm going to copy the depth track. And go ahead and move it over. Up a tiny bit. I'm going to resize it to the size of the track. And we'll paste it. This is another one that just has the mud weights. So I'm just going to add the annotations. So let's go ahead and click here. We'll say that these are mud weights. You can also name your own. So we'll say I'm going to do 65. Viscosity 60. Now any of these values, you can copy them. So if they're similar, you can copy and paste them down the way. So go ahead and say OK. Here's 60, 65 and 60 again, and I can paste. And move down the log. So here's a 66 and 62. So I'll just edit it. Okay. So we'll go back to the top again. You also want to make sure that that it wasn't still set as a lithology track. So let's go ahead and back to the depth gridding again. We're going to move over to our ROP track. So I'm going to copy it, then move it over, stretch it out, and we'll nudge it to try and get as close as we can. Okay, and we'll paste it. Okay, so now once we have it there, we're going to go ahead and add a curve. Now this time we're going to go and set it as a step curve. And so what that will do is it's a different tracing algorithm. So we'll click on the step curve. I'm going to name mine ROP. It's not in the list. So I'll click the more curves and put in ROP. Okay, so in here, I'm going to go ahead and make this 5. And it works the same way as the lithology, where it's setting an interval. And where that works nicely is so you can click anywhere within the interval and it'll create your data for you. And it'll go ahead and start creating your stair step. Oops. Now if you move it, you can only have one within that step. And so it'll just start creating it for you. Now one tool that's kind of nice in here is you can actually use this auto scroll. Oops. So if you have the auto scroll on, if you start it going, if you do that, it'll change directions if you need it to. If you use the arrows on your keyboard, the down arrow will speed it up and the up arrow will slow it down. So it's just a way to kind of keep it going. You can also hit the A key for add, and it'll add them as well. Okay, so it switches the direction. Oops. Okay, and then if you hit your left or right arrow, or you can hit this key to stop. So we'll go and put this back. Now one thing I forgot a minute ago, so we'll go back and do, on where I put my mud weights on this track, I forgot to add kind of my text curve. So I'm going to go and call it MW for mud weight. So I'll just say mud weight text. Okay, so now we're going to go back and we're going to calibrate this last track. So I can use the one I'm on, copy the depth axis, go to the top left corner, stretch it over, and paste it. So this time we're going to have our lithology descriptions. So let me go ahead and do more curves. And I'll do just L. Yes. Okay. So, and then we do the annotations just as we did before. So just click where you have it. It'll set the depth of where it is. I'll put Sandstone. Okay. Again, you can change the text or the other. So here so far we've captured lithology, some of our tracks. So we're going to go ahead and save it. So once we have it saved, we can export our digital log, or even if you wanted to, say you just wanted the text annotations to take someplace else, I could export the annotations. So save, and you'll notice that it will come up with the type of data that you put in, the depth, and then the text that you have in there. Now, if the header had been set with the API number or the UWI, then that would be the first column of data. We want to show it on our LAS file this time, so we're going to just export the digital log and save it. So what you'll see here is here's the data that we covered. So we have the lithology track that we did, Here's the data we put in, and then this can be formatted as well. Take this toolbar for me, recording. So you're actually going to be looking for this one. So in here, you can format any of your tracks if you want them to be a little bit smaller. I don't think we want to do that. Or move it over, make this one a little bit wider. And once you're in here, any of this text can also be edited. So if I turn on my annotation and I can go in and look at it, I can edit it, I can change it. And even the lithologies. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Oh, interesting. Okay. So there you have it.